violating the rights of Americans. The House sustains President Ford's veto of the federal. Secretary Kissinger says any Middle East settlement will require some sort of American assurance of Israel's security. Brazil's soccer superstar, Pelé, signs the biggest money contract for a team athlete in sports history. And tonight, a comment on President Ford's handling of the news conference. As President Ford promised at the news conference last night, most of the Rockefeller Commission's report on the CIA was today made public. David Shoemaker has the highlights.
Just a few months ago, the report would have been explosive, a 299-page indictment of the CIA for spying on American citizens, illegally intercepting mail, conducting wiretaps and break-ins. But with the recent nonstop analysis of the CIA and the assassination controversy, the report reads a bit like an old magazine you'd find in a doctor's waiting room. The Commission's basic conclusion: the great majority of CIA activity is within the law. However, the agency has engaged in some activities which should not be permitted to happen again. Activities that were unlawful and constituted improper invasions upon the rights of Americans. Most of what occurred took place under the code name Operation Chaos, conducted in basement vaults at the CIA under security precautions unusual even for the super-secret agency. Most people there didn't know it was underway. The major features of Operation Chaos: compiling dossiers on 7,200 Americans, computer entries on more than 300,000 names and organizations, 32 wiretaps and another 32 electronic buggings, none under proper judicial warrant. 12 break-ins, illegal then and now, says the Commission. On mail cover in the last year of operation, more than 2 million letters were intercepted and checked. 8,700 pieces of mail were opened, all unlawful, according to the Commission. It began in 1967, according to the report. The Johnson administration, looking for any sign foreign interests were behind anti-war demonstrations. The original targets, organizations like Women's Strike for Peace and the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Operation Chaos mushroomed under White House prodding in the Nixon administration. More agents and more money, new targets, blacks mostly, but some reporters too. The Commission said the CIA had no authority to investigate newsmen because of leaks. Most of the abuses and misuses of and by the CIA were traced to Richard Helms, director from 1966 to 1973. The report suggests future directors might be chosen from outside the agency, men with stature, independence, and integrity. Helms was severely criticized, particularly for Watergate. There is no evidence the CIA was involved in the Watergate break-in, according to the report, but the record does show the agency failed to cooperate with investigators and destroyed possibly relevant information. Vice President Rockefeller, relieved to have the report, and he hopes the controversy off his hands, today was cornered by reporters at the Capitol.
No, ma'am. We turned everything over. It's all gone to the Senate, and they're investigating the same thing.
The chairman of the Senate's investigators, Frank Church, received his copy of the report at a committee hearing. His panel will do more, he promised. The buck will stop with the Senate. Only a few new pieces of information in the report. For instance, the CIA experimented with LSD in the early 1950s. Not all the subjects were told they were taking the mind-expanding drug. This, the Commission concluded, was clearly illegal. One man died, committed suicide. As you know very well, political assassination was not covered, except for the murder of President Kennedy. No credible evidence, says the Commission, that the CIA was involved. Finally, these basic recommendations: congressional oversight should be improved, perhaps with a joint committee. The CIA budget, at least to some extent, should be made public. President should refrain from directing the CIA to perform internal security tasks. All CIA domestic surveillance files should be destroyed. And the CIA should issue detailed guidelines making it clear that the clandestine collection of intelligence directed against American citizens is prohibited. The Rockefeller Commission may have rejected the word massive, but it clearly adopted the concern. David Shoemaker, ABC News, Washington.
According to the Rockefeller Commission's report, the Women's Strike for Peace was one of the organizations kept under surveillance by the CIA. ABC's Frank Tomlinson today talked with one of the leaders of that organization.
Nancy Ramsey calls the Women's Strike for Peace a disorganized group. She compares it to a floating crap game with no real leadership, just thousands of women from their 20s to their 80s. She claims that for years she always had that feeling that someone was watching.
There is a certain element of outrage to find that it was absolutely true, that the United States government was spying on its own citizens who were performing their legitimate constitutional civil rights. If there were people in high forms of government, whether they were Mr. Rockefeller or anyone else who didn't know, I don't know how they didn't know, there were the subtle processes of telephones that didn't always work, policemen in places where you were going, for example, to petition your congressman, who could never have known you would be there unless they had overheard it on a telephone.
What do you think they were trying to find out?
Well, I haven't the faintest idea what they were trying to find out. It's a shame they didn't come and ask us, because they certainly would have saved the taxpayer a tremendous amount of money.
Nancy Ramsey remains skeptical. She's happy the CIA report makes public what she already knew, but she doesn't think it will change things in the future. Frank Tomlinson, ABC News, Washington.
Amplifying what Senator Church said today, he says that when his Senate Intelligence Committee finishes the work which the Rockefeller Commission started, it will make a full disclosure of its findings. He said the committee already has hard evidence of CIA complicity in murder plots and murder attempts. But Church says he is confident that a full disclosure can be made in a way that relays all the facts but avoids the injury that no one wants. The committee's vice chairman, Republican Senator John Tower, said he believes the committee will give the CIA matter a pretty thorough airing, but some information will probably have to be withheld.
Boy, girls, quiet. What a headache.
Pretty bad, huh?
I'll say, got anything for it?
Here's something strong. Anison's Adult Strength.
The others are also meant for adults.
But while ordinary aspirin, buffered aspirin, and Anison start with the same amount of pain reliever, Adult Strength Anison adds 23% more, and then Anison adds an extra ingredient not found in the others. We're great, huh?
You weren't kidding. And Anison didn't upset my stomach.
Next headache, take Anison, an Adult Strength pain reliever.
Whether you drive in the city or under big sky, if you're a smart buyer, the tire to buy is Atlas. This brand has a smooth ride. And mileage? Oh, yeah. Plus, sure-footed handling to get you there. That's Atlas. Especially when the roads are rough, Atlas tires show their stuff. Built to go where the going's tough. That's Atlas. Steel radial, belted, or four-ply. Where do you get these quality tires? At service stations near you. So be a smart buyer. Get Atlas.
President Ford today won another victory in his running battle with Congress. The House failed to override the president's veto of a strip mining bill, falling 3 votes short of the needed 2/3 majority. It was the 3rd consecutive veto that Congress has sustained this year. Late today, the president spoke to a group of industrialists at the White House and discussed the veto as well as other topics related to the economy. White House correspondent Tom Jarrow reports.
Fresh from 2 major veto victories over the Congress, the president was on a combative, upbeat note as he addressed the National Industrial Council. He pledged to keep the pressure on Congress to hold down federal spending. He chided the lawmakers for not enacting an energy program, and he told the businessmen they can be confident of an economic recovery.
To those gainfully employed, it's the consensus that we're on our way out, just beginning to get out of this recession. But if you look at the consumer confidence figures, if you look at the wide range of other economic indicators, including those that came out of the Department of Commerce last week, there's good reason for us to believe the strength of this economy is such that we're going to be looking at a much better picture in the 3rd and 4th quarters of 1975, and increasingly better in 1976.
Even with those rosy predictions for late 75 and 76, the president acknowledged that all the indicators are not good and unemployment remains too high. Tom Jarrow, ABC News at the White House.
At the meeting of petroleum exporting countries now underway in Gabon, oil ministers have been talking about price increases of as high as 38% in world oil prices October 1st. Today, the White House said President Ford believes if any increase in prices is justified, 7 or 8% should be the maximum. The Ford Motor Company announced today it has made changes on 8 current model small cars to boost gasoline mileage to 34 miles per gallon in highway driving. The changes have been made on the Pinto, Mustang II, and Bobcat lines. Their best mileage earlier was about 26 miles per gallon. Stock prices dropped today in the second straight day of brisk trading. The Dow Jones Industrial Average lost about 8 points. Standard & Poor's Index was down 0.77. The American Stock Exchange Index closed down 0.63.
Nothing but gutter balls today. It's nagging, backache. Ruined my sleep, too.
Listen, honey, you ought to try my Doan's pills. They sure help me.
When nagging backache due to overexertion or everyday stress and strain comes on, Doan's pain-relieving action often brings temporary relief and lets you get a good night's sleep.
Feeling lots better tonight, thanks to Doan.
Try Doan's pills for relief of nagging backache.
You know, America's looking for a lot of good sound values these days, and as always, one of the best is going Greyhound.
Take a little time to ride along.
If you suffer from occasional attacks of bronchial asthma, you know tablets, capsules, or liquids can take 15 minutes to work. You want relief that starts in seconds. You want Broncaid Mist. Broncaid Mist speeds directly to your lungs, opens clogged air passages in seconds, helps release trapped air so you breathe freely, in and out. So the next time bronchial asthma attacks, fight back. Reach for Broncaid Mist, the fastest relief possible.
Announcing one of the best rebate programs to come down the road. The Remington rebate. Buy a smooth-handling radial shaver and get $5 back. Get $3 on this high-performance power control dryer. And $2 on this mist curling iron and this dryer styler. Like something a little sporty? This Lady Remington will get you $2. If you like the wind in your hair, buy a hot pistol and get $2. The Remington rebate. It lets you drive the bargain.
The president today held his regular weekly meeting with Republican leaders Hugh Scott and John Rhodes, after which the leaders held a news conference. It was the first for the Scott-Rhodes team, but part of a Republican tradition that began in the 50s with Senator Everett Dirksen and Congressman Charles Halleck. John Farmer has details.
Hugh and John, as they billed themselves, knew that comparisons with their box office predecessors were inevitable. They knew they had a hard act to follow.
Sons of Ev and Charlie.
Well, not quite. Ev Dirksen and Charlie Halleck began their weekly Democratic roast in 1961. The issues were different, and so was Dirksen's method of getting attention. Everything Dirksen did and said got news coverage, which then, as now, was the purpose of the exercise.
You've got some film in those cameras, just to be sure.
They did, and they still do, looking for headlines or laughs, but today not finding many of either. Dirksen's primary target was that Democrat in the White House. Now, with their own man there, Scott and Rhodes must aim at the Democrats in the Congress.
It isn't the Speaker who can't get them together, it's the Democrats themselves who can't get together.
Dirksen and Halleck, and later Dirksen with Congressman Gerald Ford, were pretty good at zapping the opposition. Halleck and Ford usually played straight men to Dirksen's optimistic mirth.
I never think in terms of other than achievement, accomplishment, consummation, and glory.
Now, Scott and Rhodes are mostly both straight men, attacking the issues and the Democrats, but hopefully remembering the Dirksen formula for getting things done in Congress.
Well, I think compared to them, we're pretty colorless, it seems to me. I'll let Senator Scott speak for himself, maybe.
Oh, I don't accept that. I don't accept that at all. I think they had their style. We hope that you give us a chance. We'll develop ours. We always have our troubles, whether it's surcharge or nearly anything else. But always and always I've found, as you so well know, that the oil can is mightier than the sword.
This is Don Farmer, ABC News on Capitol Hill.
The Senate leadership today discussed a proposal for live television coverage of tomorrow's debate on the New Hampshire Senate seat, contested by Democrat John Durkin and Republican Louis Wyman. That would be a first for broadcast coverage in the Senate. Yesterday in London, a similar first took place, the first radio coverage of a debate in Parliament. ABC's George Watson reports.
In the beginning, there were no cameras and no microphones, and so that's the way it's always been around the Houses of Parliament, except for once a year when prying electronic eyes and ears were permitted.
Mr. Speaker, the Queen commands this honourable House to attend Her Majesty immediately in the House of Peers.
That occasion is the formal state opening of Parliament, full of royal pomp and circumstance, with the Queen sitting on her throne and reading a speech prepared by the Prime Minister. But all that changed when Parliament grudgingly approved an experiment in radio broadcasting. Television, for the time being, was rejected. But if the radio experiment is successful, then Parliament on radio is likely to become a regular program. It started on Monday and featured Prime Minister Harold Wilson playing to a rowdy House of Commons.
Statement, Prime Minister.
And the questions are over. The Prime Minister on the results of the referendum. This is policy from now on. A few papers waved on the Labour side, a few on the Conservative side.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I should like to make a statement. As the House knows, last Thursday, the British people voted to stay in the European community.
Mr. Speaker, is the Prime Minister aware that we join with him in rejoicing over this excellent result, which confirmed the earlier parliamentary decision?
You'll forgive me if I say it was a little obscure what you tried to convey. I shall need time and perhaps a little éclaircissement.
Outsiders are likely to be surprised at the amount of jeers, groans, and catcalls that emanates from so many distinguished parliamentarians, but that's the way it's done. So, freedom of broadcasting has won a limited victory in Britain. People can now listen but not look. Radio is permitted but not television. The debatable question now arises when the children of the Mother of Parliaments will allow themselves to be seen as well as heard. This is George Watson, ABC News, London.
Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin arrived in Washington today for talks with President Ford. There were reports that Rabin is ready to soften the Israeli stand in the Israeli-Egyptian negotiations. Meanwhile, Secretary of State Kissinger told a House committee that any Middle East settlement would require some sort of American assurance of Israel's security. Defense Secretary Schlesinger said today that for the first time, the Soviet Union has placed missiles at its Persian Gulf port of Berbera in Somalia, East Africa. Schlesinger said reconnaissance photos showed surface-to-surface and air-to-surface missiles, as well as a repair and storage base.
My tobacco. Just getting started. I'm Father Nature, and when I tend my tobacco plants, I really enjoy a quality cigar, like this El Producto, made from my fine tobaccos grown slowly and carefully. El Producto takes their own sweet time with my great tobacco. And you can sure taste the difference time makes. Take all the time you need, little fellow. We're in no hurry.
Have you considered comparing whole wheat total with the leading natural cereals? You'll see there's a big difference. 1 ounce of fortified total gives you 100% of the recommended daily allowance of all these important vitamins and iron. 1 ounce of the leading natural cereals gives you no more than 6%. Check the vitamins and iron listed on the side panels. You'll see 100% versus 6%. That's the total difference.
State governments searching for new sources of revenue have turned to lotteries and other forms of gambling in recent years, but sometimes things don't work out as planned. The Iowa House of Representatives today passed a measure designed to tighten that state's gambling laws. Ron Miller explains the problem.
Church bingo games, friendly social wagering. That's what the Iowa legislature had in mind when it legalized gambling in 1973. But as so often happens, there was a loophole in the law, and things have changed. Now, blackjack is as available in Iowa's bars and restaurants as food and liquid refreshments. Other games are also available, but blackjack is most popular.
I like it. You can go in and take it or leave it, you know?
We go out of state to gamble, so why not have it here? Why not have Iowa bring in some of the money as well?
But that's the problem. Iowa doesn't make a dime from the card games, which are doing a $37 million a year business. And while the state tax is bingo, these contests go untouched by the revenue collector.
The law presently on the books is non-productive. It provokes a lot of difficulty, a lot of trouble, without any benefit or advantage to the taxpayer.
Are there crooked games here in town?
Are there crooked games? I don't know for sure, but I heard there are. I myself don't partake of them, and I wouldn't know that, but I assume there are.
But some are not so passive about questioning the legitimacy of the games. There have been numerous assaults and at least 7 homicides associated with gambling in the state. Unlike Nevada, the state of Iowa does not control its gaming.
Majority of the games are straight in town. A few of them aren't, but if they're not, the people just stop playing there. They can't beat them, so they fade out. Regardless of whether they outlaw the blackjack, they're just still going to play, in a back room or something. But
So somewhere between the Iowa legislature and the church bingo game, the state's gambling law embraced blackjack and professional players. But most here agree the odds are that gambling as it now exists in Iowa won't continue much longer. Ron Miller, ABC News, Sioux City, Iowa.
I'd like to see a cordless grass shear. Could you say cordless?
You just said Distan.
The people who brought cordless power to your backyard now bring you new low prices on their performance-proven grass shears, including the convertible that switches to a walk-along upright, and powerful distant hedge trimmers with no cord to tie you down. When you say cordless, you're saying
Distan.
We offered Spread Satin customers another brand of paint. Listen.
No, thanks. You couldn't give it to me. You really couldn't. I'd take it home, but I wouldn't use it.
No, I wouldn't do that. I'm not going to switch. I'm going to stick with Glidden and the Spread Satin. Nah, I've never found another brand I could like. I never have.
I would never use anything but Glidden Spread Satin.
What am I going to do with another brand? Paint my basement?
Glidden Spread Satin, a paint you can be loyal to.
In other news, the Civil Rights Commission reported today that minority-run businesses receive less than 0.7% of the contracts awarded by federal, state, and city governments. The amount of contracts awarded to firms owned by women was described as imperceptible. The Commission recommends that companies owned by minorities and women share in contracts in proportion to their numbers in a given business. 3 convicts serving life terms continue to hold 15 prison employees hostage today in a small vault in the British Columbia Penitentiary. They're demanding passage to a foreign country. There's been speculation that Soviet Communist Party chief Leonid Brezhnev has been ill because he had not been seen in public for a month. Today, Brezhnev, looking rested and healthy, went on Soviet television and said, "As you can see, I am the same as I always have been." Several hundred prostitutes have been sitting in churches in 8 French cities for a week. Today, they were evicted by police for disrupting public order. The prostitutes, whose profession is legal in France, were protesting police harassment and demanding the same rights as other working women. President Valéry Giscard d'Estaing promised to look into their grievances. Brazil's superstar soccer player, Edson Arantes de Nascimento, better known to fans as Pelé, signed a contract today with the New York Comets, Cosmos, a member of the North American Soccer League. The arrival of the man known as the King of Soccer was a big-time event. Sal Marciano reports.
Pele's arrival in New York jammed the Posh 21 Club as the press recorded the official signing of what's described as the biggest contract for a team athlete in the history of sports. The reported figure is between $4 and $7 million and could be higher depending on the sale of Pele-endorsed equipment. Not bad for a 4th grade dropout. Pele is 5 feet 9 inches, 165 pounds, extremely quick and cunning. No player in the history of the game has possessed Pele's complete skills. During his 17-year playing career, Pele led Brazil to 3 World Cups in 4 tries, and the famed number 10 was so popular, Pele was officially declared a natural resource by his country. He scored over 1,200 goals, an average of almost 1 a game. In 1969, the president of Brazil honored Pele for his 1,000th goal. Pele became Brazil's most important export, an ambassador of goodwill, as he was acclaimed worldwide. In 1973, President Nixon hosted a White House reception in his honor. Already wealthy and world famous, Pele said today through an interpreter he came out of retirement to spark interest in American soccer.
E futebol, o nosso soccer,
The question remains, can one man popularize soccer in the United States? Sal Marciano, ABC News, New York.
I'll have tonight's comment in a moment.
This may challenge what you believe about pain relievers. Laboratory studies compared 2-tablet doses of Bufferin, Bayer, and Anacin. On the average, in 10 minutes, Bufferin put 3 grains in the bloodstream, Bayer and Anacin less than 2. In 15, note Bufferin superiority. In 20, Bufferin 5.5, Bayer and Anacin 3.5 and less. Take Bufferin. It's easy on the stomach, and it puts much more pain reliever in the bloodstream sooner.
People with hard water have real problems cleaning the toilet bowl.
The rust stains stick. I don't know if anything can work in this hard water.
Let's test your liquid bowl cleaner against Crystal Vanish on tough bottom of the bowl rust stains.
I doubt if Vanish can get them. It's foaming.
Vanish cleans, disinfects too.
With Vanish, there's no stain. For my hard water problems, I'll buy Vanish.
Vanish, for a crystal clean difference you can see.
The president's news conference last night could not have cheered many Democrats, particularly Democrats who want to run for president. It must have been discouraging for 2 reasons. First, Mr. Ford looked good, alert and responsive, and better informed than some of the reporters. He never looks better than when his patent honesty stands in contrast to someone else's culpability, even when it is an unnamed someone else, as in the case of the CIA scandal. And second, it's clear there are going to be some names in this story, and they are likely to be mostly Democratic names. A president who handles news conferences well, and who even seems to enjoy them, has a regular, well-watched, ostensibly non-political platform that no outsider can match. And for the first time since John Kennedy, there is a president who handles the forum well and seems to like it. Of course, the Senate, where some of the Democratic candidates are, is going to experiment with live television of the debate over the New Hampshire Senate seat. But there is some doubt that showing the Senate in what is smilingly called action will redound to the credit of senators. They are apparently going to use only one camera aimed at a rostrum so that whatever senators are in the room won't have to worry about their demeanor. But it doesn't sound like a grabber compared to a presidential news conference. In the first place, the Senate won't have all those straight men. That's tonight's news and a comment. I'm Harry Reisner. Good night.
This has been the ABC Evening News with Howard K. Smith and Harry Reisner, Monday through Friday. The guest on ABC's Issues and Answers program on Sunday will be Republican Senator Barry Goldwater of Arizona. He'll be interviewed by ABC News correspondents Bob Clark and Edward P. Morgan. Consult your local listings for the time of the broadcast of Issues and Answers, Sunday on ABC. This has been a presentation of ABC News. It's happy days for Richie when he wins a big date with the Hollywood starlet tonight at 8, 7 Central. Right after, a handful of survivors wage a desperate battle for survival in the aftermath of a killer heat wave on the Tuesday movie of the week, tonight on ABC.